Hello.
Hi, everybody.
I think you should say who we are.
I should. I
Today.
thought you were introducing. Should I? Okay.
Is this the second week we've done this? Apologies. I'm Suzanne DeWitt Hall. This is my husband, Declan DeWitt Hall. And we're here from, sorry, my dog is getting in my way. Here. There we go. We're here from Where True Love Is, the Where True Love Is movement. Checking in with you on this lovely Friday afternoon. At least it's lovely here. The sun is shining.
It's a little bit cool, but it feels good.
It's kind of perfect. I love that.
It is good. So today we thought we would talk about church, and more specifically, we've asked the question of each other: if you're inventing a church, what are the three things that you think are critical? And we kind of went our separate ways and thought about it. We're going to come together and discuss it in front of you.
Yeah.
So this will be a surprise to me, and
Surprise
I'll be a
to all of
surprise
us.
to you.
And we would be interested in hearing what your thoughts are. If you're envisioning the perfect thing that you would call church, what you could consider church. What got me thinking about this story is that yesterday I talked for a while with the pastor and visionary behind, sorry, I was trying to find it, but Common Good. Sorry, I lost my notes here. Common Good Community Church and Common Good Brewery. It's out in Santa Cruz, California, and their idea is kind of completely different from what we think of as church or many things, because of the way they run things, and they have this brewery that's functioning as a revenue generation and a community center and a number of other things. They're able to donate $2,000 to $3,000 a year to nonprofit organizations around the community, around their town, in the region. And that seemed so cool. And it's something, this is a question we've been kind of pondering for a while, is what God wants us to do in the coming years. What is sort of a vision for how we might be able to take the Where True Love Is movement and expand it from this online community of all you wonderful people out into the physical world as well. So we've been contemplating this for about a year, I would say, wouldn't you?
I think so. Probably even longer.
Yeah, and so that's where this idea came from for this topic. And yeah, so why don't you tell me your first one first?
Besides wanting to go have a beer with Christopher?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
So something that struck me right away with this is that, of course, I would like it to be a space that's fully welcoming and affirming and inclusive, including accessibility. Outside the normal church, you got to go up 25 stairs and it looks like a church. I want it to be something that's very welcoming. So I started thinking structurally, the bathrooms and the building and all of that.
So you're thinking a building is required?
Some form. I think at some point you need some kind of building if you're going to have any kind of community dinner, or you're going to have beer or coffee or whatever together. Like, you need a meeting space. But I need the meeting space to be different than what it's been.
Yeah.
The churches of yesteryear aren't working anymore.
Right.
What about you?
The first thing I wrote down was radical welcome, which is, I think, related to what you were saying. I think this can be challenging, and most churches, many churches, want to, they kind of have this as an idea, but when the rubber meets the road, it gets a lot harder.
Right.
We were involved with a meal program, and some of the folks that came, there was a residential facility nearby, and some of the folks who came had some pretty significant challenges that they had to manage. And so kind of figuring out how to make people welcome who have situations that can feel uncomfortable for other people who aren't in those circumstances. Figuring out how to manage that, and I'm not sure what that would mean. If it would be identifying a few people within your community who are really good at coming up, with those people,
right?
Or, training. I don't know how you do it, because I think it's easy to say that you want to be radically welcoming, and it's a little bit harder to accomplish.
Yeah, that was part of mine, like a subtext underneath my category, my answer to the question, I put deep in the welcome.
Oh, that's nice.
So from restrooms to accessibility to all of that. We really need to deepen the welcome so people feel welcome and comfortable.
I'm writing that down because I like that phrase.
And I think that dinner program we had was more of a church than what was going on upstairs.
It was a good program that way, and it was still challenging in
It
some
was.
cases
It really was.
to manage some.
I mean, I was glad it had an elevator, an accessibility that was okay, but I think it could have gone bigger.
Yeah.
So,
what's your next item?
well, this may seem odd, but I think that it kind of goes with the other one, and it's remove the pulpit. I think that churches that have a pastor standing in a pulpit presents a hierarchy that this is the person, and then you start to worship the person and what they have to say instead of all the people around you. And all the people around you have as much to say as the person up there. They've been to seminary, I get that, and that's good. But you've got some stuff next to me that you could teach me that could help me grow in my walk into being a human being. And so I think you got to remove the pulpit somehow. It's got to be a way where there's some kind of interaction. And good luck, pastors, because I don't know how you do that.
Right.
I mean, you have a lot to offer, and I'm not saying that they don't, because they're so much more educated than I am. But there's a lot to be said and heard from the people around you.
Well, and not just that. I mean, a lot of pastors are just overwhelmed by how much they have to do. They can't do everything that the congregations expect them to do. So I think that, preaching is something that most maybe do enjoy. But yeah, kind of breaking that model where all the expectation is and the focus and almost I've written about this a little bit, that you're almost idealizing a pastor rather than viewing them as another person like you who has a special job to do in trying to be bearer of Christ's light.
Well, I think when you put any one person on a pedestal, anybody on a pedestal, they're going to fall. You just can't put one person on a pedestal. And with that, I also think pews need to be removed. It needs to be something different than the conventional church. I mean, we're all sitting there and we're staring at one person. I don't understand why it's like that.
So
no, and they're not even, I mean, some now are stadium, these big mega churches, but they're still focusing on this one person in this choir. And it needs to be more outward focused beyond that pulpit.
Yeah. Speaking of outward focus, my next, one of them that I had was the impact on the broader community. And how is this church, for lack of a better word, of this thing that we're envisioning, how's it living out Jesus' call for justice in tangible ways, right? And this Christopher Van Hall, who I spoke with, who has this Common Good community church and Common Good brewery, they're donating all this money for work to be done out with people, real hurting people, real needs. And it's often, churches can kind of become social hubs for ourselves. It creates a community, which can be a wonderful thing. And another thing I have on there is that we should view each other as family within this community. Maybe we'll talk about that separately, but it's really good to be close with those in the church. But if it's not making a significant impact on the community in which it's located, physically, again, we're kind of talking about physical stuff here because someone commented online accessibility for those who can't get to church, and that's amazing, and that's one of the benefits coming out of pandemic, I think, is an expansion of that capability.
Yeah, for sure.
And we obviously, as the Where True Love Is movement, we're all about, reaching people wherever you happen to be sitting behind a little glowing screen. But it needs to be more than just coming to a place on Sunday and feeling good about what you're receiving and how you're feeling and all that. It needs to be about how do I bring more light into the world? How do I
that outreach
help?
thing is something I put down too, because you got to go beyond your walls. Your walls, what happens inside those walls aren't your church. It's what happens outside those walls at your church. I mean, there's the interwoven love that you share with people in that community, but what are you doing with that? If it's staying in that building, you have a problem. You contained your love and your community and God into a box, and it needs to go out. And I think that's what the Welcome Table did. It saw what the community needed. There was no hot meal program. You could go somewhere and get food, but nobody made you a dinner, and nobody made you a good dinner. And we did that, so we met that community. And Pastor Joshua I saw popped up on here earlier. He pushed that, so I was really grateful for that. I think that was something. And I read somewhere where another church was doing, meeting your community where they are and helping them with their needs. Like There was a community that was inner city, and a lot of people couldn't get a job because they didn't have cars and they couldn't afford the bus. So they chipped together and bought bikes, and they gave away like 1,400
cool.
bikes. Some people need childcare, they need baby clothes, they need, and meet the community where it is, find out what they need and meet them. Do something that reaches outside of those walls, because the more you stay inside those walls, the more you confine the gifts and God's love. You just keep it in that box, and it needs to go outside. So I think that outreach is a really important point.
Yeah, changing the world. Kind of in contrast to that, it is and it isn't, because needing an outward focus. I also have a note that says, I have this up in my office, a little post-it that says, "Be a campfire." I heard it on some kind of a radio, I think it was NPR programming, talking about a sitcom. It was a writer for a sitcom, and there was a question about, how valuable is your work? And her response was that they were creating this little haven of light and laughter and kind of, sunshine, metaphorical sunshine, in a world which really needed it. It was, I think, a few months ago, so, things were pretty heavy. And I think it's really important to have places and spaces, whether it's online, like what you do with Where to Love Is community, or a church community, to be that campfire where it's safe, it's warm, you feel welcomed. There's usually laughter. We talked when we were in our sabbatical about, what does it mean? What does a campfire mean? What does it symbolize? And what kind of experiences do you have when you're sitting outside a campfire? So yeah, I think that's kind
and
of
how do you
important.
bring that to the world? I like that you mentioned the social media presence, because I think that's essential. I think churches can't go back to being just inside those walls. I think your social media presence is essential. There are people who don't feel good. They can't get out of their homes, or just don't want to. They want to sit home that Sunday with a cup of coffee. They're
not able to leave. There's a million reasons.
Surgery. It could be any kind of
Young
things.
children at home who aren't manageable in church.
Yeah. And use that presence to the best of your ability. Share, organizations that can help people. Share your videotapes. Be encouraging with your messaging.
Did you just say videotapes?
Did I? What about DVDs? No, Blu-rays. Share your videos. Videotapes, I really aged myself.
That was pretty spectacular.
Everybody
I
comes
like
to Blockbuster and rents a videotape.
Right. Take your church videos to Blockbuster to get them distributed.
All right, so what else do you have?
I also put the concept of table. Eating common food helps break down barriers, brings commonality. There's an intimacy in feeding each other. There tends to be sort of shared labor and shared work, where people, if they might be helping cook the food, they might be helping set up the space, they might be helping clean up, all kinds of things. There's something about the hospitality of eating together that seems to be really important. That would be a lot of churches do it in the ceremony, the ritualistic aspects of communion. But I think certainly, the way Jesus did it was way more than just that. There was tons of eating together, and it seems like we need to do a lot more of that.
Yeah, I've got, my last point on mine was fun, food, and laughter.
Oh yeah.
Some of the more memorable times that I have in churches involve, eating together, laughing, sharing fun, going on trips, going on overnight, excursions. So fun, food, and laughter was important to me, and I think that can be incorporated into every part of it.
Yeah, right. Like a central piece of it.
That's kind of like the campfire.
Dinner church. Yeah, it's very interrelated. Did you say that was your last one?
That kind of is, yeah.
Okay. I had two more quick ones. A willingness to speak out against injustice and in favor of justice. We've been to some churches where there was a strong unwillingness to speak out with some very significant things happening socially. And we've been to churches like Josh Noah will mention again, who was very willing to speak out. The problem being that some people are not happy to hear those messages and feel corrected. But I think that for a church to be authentic and relevant today, it needs to be engaged in some of the stuff that's going on in our world that's just really not okay. And we are of the era, I think, where people are looking for that. They want to find ways of engaging in making the world a better place.
Yeah, well, certainly. So I think we know the things that we don't like in church. You know, we've probably from the LGBTQ community have been either asked to leave or had to leave or felt uncomfortable. But think about the things that you want in a church, and start encouraging people in your area, the movers and shakers, or pastors that you know, or look for churches that are doing those things, that are creating those spaces. And remember, it doesn't have to be in a church building. You can have church in a bar down the street with 3 people.
Okay, I'm going to ping one thing in here because this was my last point, and I know we've been going for a while here. That there be some kind of independence from finances that end up driving mission, and that can either be through some sort of low overhead where you don't have to have a church building, or some kind of income generation like this brewery. Because if you're are really worried about how to pay your beautiful church building's heat, and therefore you can't say things that upset your largest tither, that's not a great model. So finding ways to break out of that, and
not to have your hands tied, or the pastor pressured, the rector's council pressured because of that financial burden. So that's a really
some
great
sort of
idea.
Financial independence. Oh, Josh says social entrepreneurship. I wrote that down when I was talking to Christopher yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, we better wrap up because we've been talking for a while.
Yeah, so go out.
Tell us your ideas.
Tell us your ideas. We'd love to hear them underneath here. Share it with people in your community. Remember that you are the church. Each and every one of you carries God with you. So go out and be that and make change. Tell people what you want. Speak up. They need that. I mean, there are pastors that are willing to listen and want to move in that direction.
Help them.
So help them.
Yeah, don't just tell them what to do. Help them.
Help them do it.
They're stretched thin.
They are. All right, everybody. So I guess we'll talk to you next week.
We
Have
will.
a blessed week and weekend, and know that we love you all.
We do. You guys take very good care.
Bye-bye.
We'll see ya.